Once again, here in Postman, let's send a post request to our user's endpoint to register a new user. So here in the body of the request, I'm going to change this to a unique email that I haven't registered before. Send. Now look at the body of the response. Okay, beautiful. Look at this headers tab. These are the HTTP headers that are sent by our server. So here we have a custom header that is x-auth-token. So whenever a header starts with X, that is treated as a custom header that is not part of the standard HTTP protocol. As you can see, I've set this header to our JSON Web Token. With this, when we register a user, we can read this HTTP header, extract the JSON Web Token, store it in the local storage, and redirect the user. Now, in my implementation, I decided to use a custom HTTP header. You may prefer to return this JSON Web Token in the body of the response. So back here, let's look at the body. Just like we're returning the ID, name, and email, we could also return a JSON Web Token. The reason I decided to use an HTTP header goes back to my Node course because I wanted to teach you how to work with custom HTTP headers. Now, back to our register form. In the doSubmit function, when we call the register function, here we should get the response. So response, let's log this on the console. Response. Now back in the browser, let's submit the registration form and then look in the console. So here's the response we get from the server. So far we have looked at the data and status properties. We also have headers. So these are the headers that we receive from the server. However, in this list, all you can see is content type, which is set to application JSON. Our custom header is not here. And this is a common issue that a lot of React developers face. To fix this issue, we need to go to our backend implementation and set an additional header in the response. So here on this terminal window where we're running our backend, let's stop this process using Control and C. Now we need to open this project, Vidly API Node, in VS Code. So here's our Node project. Don't worry if you have not worked with Node before, just follow the step I'm going to show you. It's very easy. We're going to write only one line of code. So under the routes folder, open users. So this is the implementation of our users endpoint. Here down the bottom on line 13, we have router.post. So if we send an HTTP post request to our web server, this function will be executed. Now, as you can see on line 27, we are setting a custom header that is x-auth-token. But in order for the client to be able to read this custom header, we should set an additional header that's a standard HTTP header. So dot header, we call this method and pass two arguments. The first one is the key. We set this to access dash control dash expose dash headers. This header lets a web server whitelist the headers that the browser or the client is allowed to access. So we set this to x-auth-token. So here we're using Node as the backend of this project. In your projects, you might use ASP.NET Core, Django, or any other frameworks. You need to add this standard header so the client can read this custom header. Okay, so save the changes. Now back in the terminal, we need to restart our web server. So node index.js. Okay, our web server is listening on port 3900. Beautiful. Now, once again, I'm going to submit our registration form with a unique email, register. Now in the console, look at our response object. Let's expand headers. Now we have our custom header. So this is our JSON Web Token. We can simply read this and store it in the local storage. So back in our register form, once again, we call local storage. That set item, we set the key to token and the value to response.headers. Here we can use the bracket notation to access this property, x-auth-token. And finally, we'll redirect the user using this.props.history.push to the home page. So let's test the application. Back in the application tab, here in the local storage, I'm going to delete the existing token. Now let's fill out the registration form with a new email address. Let's say user@domain.com with this password and this username. Register. We are redirected to the homepage. Beautiful. Let's take a look at our local storage. So here's our token. And now our user is automatically logged in upon registration.